Jake, there's somebody special in the Zoom meeting. Care to elaborate?
So we are honored to be joined by former MLB catcher and a good friend of mine, Chris Gimenez, today.
What's up, guys? I think you have me mistaken. I suck.
I think
man.
you're the best catcher in Twins history.
I think you're right, but
hey, he is the best.
Turns out there's some guy named Joe Mauer that used to be a catcher who he was just like he was okay.
He's the best pitcher in Twins.
That is
history.
true.
There we go.
Yeah. I was looking back just kind of how we got to know each other, Chris, and I found this. I don't know if you remember signing this for me.
Wow.
This was the first time I actually got your autograph.
I think didn't I say like something about like you had to have a picture of me pitching or something like that, or
you told us that one time out back when it was just me and Pete, and I got this photo printed and I said, "Can you write 0.1 innings pitched?"
That's right.
0.0 ERA, and you looked at me and said, "Dude, that's classic." And I remember that that's been one of the best memories since.
I wish I was still my ERA.
Oh, man.
Well, man, it's awesome having you on today. We're just
thank you guys. Seriously, this is pretty cool that you guys do this. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully
we're excited
you're the
to talk a little
first
career.
of many pros.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. I could be the icebreaker for that. Let's do it.
True. I guess the first thing that I had on my mind is just so we're starting at like the top of your playing days. You're actually drafted twice. So once out of high school, and then in the 34th round, and then in the 19th out of college. So like, what was the process like getting scouted and getting drafted twice?
Yeah, no, I mean that's honestly it started out in high school. Luckily for me, the area that I grew up in Northern California was not a very heavily scouted area. I mean, there were scouts there. I was lucky because I was able to play varsity my freshman year, and an opposing team, our huge rival in our conference, had a kid who ended up getting drafted in high school out of I think it was the 50th round he got drafted. But there were some scouts here and there all through kind of that process my freshman year. And as I got a little bit older, I was 6'1" and a $180, so I was like a string bean, but I was strong and I could swing really hard and hit the ball really far, and I had a pretty good arm at the time. It's gone downhill ever since on all of those categories, but yeah, I mean luckily for me, I was very fortunate. I have a very, very close family friend who is a former Major League Baseball player, and he was kind of a bird dog scout for the Anaheim Angels at the time. His name was Frank LaCourty. He's kind of like one of my second or third dads, kind of, because I latched onto him really quickly. His son was kind of an idol of mine. His son, Vince Jr., went to San Jose State. I grew up watching him pitch at San Jose State. He actually pitched on their College World Series team. And I had a chance to watch them, as he was in college. And, they really kind of took me under their wing. My dad leaned heavily on those two guys because they had gone through a lot of the draft process. And thankfully, Frank was able to get me involved in some sort of showcase, stuff like that. He got me a tryout for the area code team, and I made the area code team. And that was kind of like I would say the like I'm here moment. If area code games that's basically the
is that
one
like
you
town
want to get
ball?
to. What's that?
Is area code like town ball in a sense?
What it is it's basically state tournaments. So you basically make the all-state team, and then everybody goes and plays each other in Florida, or actually the one we played in was in Long Beach, California. But it's the most heavily recruited tournament they have for high school. And there's over 500 college scouts, a couple hundred pro scouts, and it's kind of funny because I was a catcher, so I didn't get to see it because it's behind me. But when I was there catching, my dad said it was like the coolest thing ever. Is I was catching a kid who got signed to go to Stanford, who ended up getting drafted in the second round out of Stanford. And we were in high school at the time, but he starts to throw, and he's throwing 98, and then my dad said like 500 radar guns like all raise up at the same time. So it was kind of cool, but I didn't get to see that. But, he got some pictures of it, which was kind of neat. But, really that was a big kind of jumping off point for me. My pitching coach for that area code team was best friends with my pitching coach for my soon to be college team. He's actually the one that kind of really nudged me going to the University of Nevada, and was like, he's like, have you ever heard of Nevada? And I'm like, what the hell is Nevada? Like, I know it's a state, but like, what is it? And me being young and dumb and kind of big headed, I was getting recruited by a lot of big name schools, and I'm like, Nevada, man, I'm not going to Nevada. Are you kidding me? But I had a lot of faith in my my pitching coach. I relied a lot on his kind of guidance as that whole season went along. And he's like, I really think you should go give him a check out. And I decided to take one of my 5 visits. It was actually the first one I took. I went there for an official visit, and I told my parents as soon as I flew there that morning, flew home that night. It's only an hour flight from my hometown. And I told my dad and my mom, I was like, this is where I'm going. I mean, it just, something about it really kind of struck me as it just seemed like I love the outdoors. I love mountains. I love, weather. And it just like, it has all of that, obviously, with the weather we were just talking about earlier. But, I decided to come here, and it was there was always something telling me that like, that was the right spot. And, there was a few factors in that decision. And, just the fact that I could be close enough to home that my parents could come watch. I didn't want to go to the East Coast because my parents, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, and, they couldn't get out there to come see me play. And I knew the sacrifices that they made when I was a kid to, allow me to play All-Stars and Little League. And, as I got older, travel ball kind of like basically first started in my hometown. So yeah, they made some sacrifices for me to be able to do all that stuff. So I decided that being close to home, but not too close to where they couldn't show up like every day, but, close enough that they wanted to come up for a weekend and watch a series, it was great. And then the conference we ended up playing, we played Fresno State, which is 2 hours away, and we play San Jose State, which is 20 minutes away. And that was, I always kind of took it to San Jose State, not intentionally, but that was the place I always wanted to go out of high school. I mean, that was my hometown school, and I grew up watching games there, and they were literally one of the only teams in California to not recruit me. So I made them pay for it throughout my entire college career.
That's
there you
awesome.
go. And I just was interested, like, what made you go to college? Did you just not feel ready out of high school?
No, that's actually a really, really good question. I was hell-bent on not going to college, but my dad was kind of instrumental in that. And, I think he kind of saw the future, and maybe even having some talks with my family friend, Frank McCourty, about minor league baseball and, kind of the grind that entails to get to the big leagues. I was telling all the scouts in high school I was going to sign. I didn't want to go to college. And, they start talking money numbers and stuff like that. Like, what's it going to take for you to sign? And I'm like, $5 million, like not really, but, I'm thinking everybody's telling me I'm going to go within the first 3 rounds. And, my dad kind of had to sit me down, and he's like, listen, if there's a dollar amount, like, say back then, I think the first pick of the draft got maybe like $1.5 million. So the very end of the first round was like $700,000 or $800,000, which is obviously a ridiculous amount of money. But, now the last pick of the first round gets like $6 million. Like, it's ridiculous. But so there's quite a difference in that. But yeah, so we kind of came up with a dollar amount. My dad said, if they want to offer you $1.2 million, that was enough to pay for all my 4 years of school, and then obviously have some, to kind of start my life. That if that was the number, then, if somebody wanted to give it to us, then we would do it. If not, like, you made an obligation to go to school, you gave them your word in regards to like signing a letter of intent. And you said, you're going to honor that unless, this circumstance happens. So that's mainly the reason I went, and turned out to be a pretty good decision. I mean, not that I wouldn't have made it to the big leagues going out of high school, but now that I've been on this side of it, I see, all these young kids coming in. A lot of them never been away from their mom and dad for any point in time. They can't do their laundry. It's like little simple things about living on your own. Plus too, just, experiencing college. And I'm not talking about like the partying aspect of it, but, the camaraderie ship, the team aspect of it. And I mean, sure, you go out and you party a little bit too. We're all human here. But, you have to experience that. And I thought that was a really big, I always consider myself very mature, but that was a maturity level for me from a baseball standpoint. I got to face that next level of competition and kind of get my seasoning in to be able to make it so I could go and have a little bit easier time in pro ball when I did end up getting drafted.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Maybe we could touch briefly just on like your minor league experience.
Sure.
You played
you
for
did say it was a grind.
It is, yes.
Yeah. So as fans, we obviously are really involved in like MLB, but especially being in the Twin Cities, we don't really have like a minor league team. We have the Saints, but that's independent.
Right.
Like, what was your experience playing minor leagues?
The minor leagues it's the ultimate test. I honestly, I would argue and say that the minor leagues are more difficult than the big leagues for a few different reasons. It's going to sound kind of ridiculous saying that just, at face value, because the big leagues is really, really hard. Don't get me wrong. And you can tell by my career average, I sucked, but the minor leagues really it's the weed out process. It's what gives you your roots to get to the big leagues, to survive in the big leagues. Essentially, you have to learn how to deal with failure. You have to learn how to deal with, crappy bus rides, crappy stadiums, crappy food. It really kind of brings out the guys who really want it the most. Because there were plenty of guys who were like uber talented. I think out of my draft, our first rounder made it, but that was almost like a guarantee. But he deserved it. He was really good. But then our second rounder, our third rounder, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. I think the next round draft pick that made it to the big leagues that year was me at 19. So our first rounder and our 19th rounder, and then our 23rd rounder and our 49th rounder, which ended up being Tony Sipp. He was a very, very solid left-handed pitcher in the big leagues for quite a few years. He made like $40 million. He was one of those guys like me where they were like, hey, we'll give you $1 million. And they happened to get him like late. Nobody else thought they could sign him. So it was a signability thing. The Indians came in, gave Sipp almost $1 million in the, 49th round.
Not a big deal.
Yeah. And it was a big deal. So at the time, I think that was the largest bonus ever handed out past the whatever round it was. But I don't know if it's been broken since then. But yeah, it's a very, very fun time because you're around your guys so much. You know what I mean? Like you're in such close-knit, like tight quarters, and they're not nice. It really makes you appreciate and work your ass off essentially to we're PG, I said that, I'm sorry. So
PG-13.
Yeah.
PG-13, you're good.
We'll censor. That's perfect.
We'll get a disclaimer at the beginning.
Yeah, thank you. But it really weeds out the guys who don't want it and who are there to just kind of, have nightlife and, spend money and, all that kind of stuff. It really kind of is like a soul searching time. And, I got to play in some really fun places in the minor leagues. I think before I made it to the big leagues, I was there for 4.5 years. All up and down Ohio and Carolina, which is where the Indians, which is the team I was drafted by, that was their minor league affiliates. Were kind of close to Cleveland for the most part, but then the one was kind of an offshoot. But you just get a chance to meet so many cool people along the way, and just kind of mature as a human being and as a baseball player. It definitely is a grind though, because you're showing up. It's one thing coming to Target Field every day because that's my favorite stadium to go to. It's beautiful, like beautiful.
Good
and
answer.
it's one thing going to Oneonta, New York, where there's 17 people in the stands and everybody was social distancing there before that was even a thing. So it definitely will weed out the weak for sure.
Yeah. And you talked about playing in interesting places. I was looking at your baseball reference. It says that you played a season in the Dominican Winter League and the Venezuelan Winter League. And what was that like?
You talk about a mind-blowing experience. In the lower levels, especially of the minor leagues, there is a ton of Dominican and Venezuelan kids. You know, none of them speak English. You know, none of them have like clothes most of the time. You really get a perspective and a sense of where these young kids come from and why they are the way they are, and then why they act the way they act. You know, and I don't mean that in a negative way. They play with an exuberance and an excitement that you can only understand when you go play winter ball. Because when you go to winter ball and a guy hits a single up the middle and you think, oh, no big deal, single. Well, everybody jumps out of the dugout like you just won the World Series, and they're all high-fiving each other. And then it's like, you're like, what are we doing right now? Like, but that's how they play. They love the game, and you really get a good sense. I remember one of my kids who I kind of took under my wing. He was 18 years old in the United States for his first time. He spoke literally like 4 words of English. His name was Jose Constanza, and we called him Chucky. I don't know why. I don't remember why, but his nickname was Chucky. So, you know, he didn't speak English. I could speak like a little bit of Spanish because I took Spanish in high school for 4 years, but that was the extent of my Spanish speaking. And I kind of would help him. Like if we would go to McDonald's, like they don't speak English, so they would just point. You know, they would sit there and be like, that one, they want that one. So he could tell me and I could order for him. And, you know, he used to tell me about his mother, and they had a house with a dirt floor. And when I actually went and played in the Dominican, I got to go to his house. I got to meet his mom. And see the house that he grew up in. And it was like a 500 square foot dirt, like a hut with dirt floors. And his mom had these cute, like she was so excited because she had these little like cool drape things that she made from like literally sewed herself. But I mean, you get an idea of where these kids come from, and you know, you kind of get a perspective of how lucky we are to live in the United States. And you know, even myself growing up, we didn't have a lot. You know, I had so much more than those kids. So it really makes you respect it. But what an eye-opening experience. It's a lot of fun. You know, they have cheerleaders on the dugouts, like going crazy, and they're all really good looking. You know, it's like, you're like, what is going on right now? You know, like people get hits, and there's huge fights in the stands. There's like 50,000 people there when you have rivals. I played for basically like the Yankees of the Dominican, and our rival was like the Red Sox, which was Licey. And anytime we played each other, it was like a huge spectacle. I mean, there were massive fights going on in the stands, and it was kind of like, but that's all normal there. They just, you know, they're just like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, and I'm like,
that's awesome. I
swear to God, I just saw this guy get smashed over the head with a bottle, and I'm like, oh, happened. All right.
Kind of sounds like a European soccer game.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah, it's a lot like what it is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And now turning the page from minors, do you have any like a good call-up story, or what was your experience getting called up?
My first call-up was crazy. Honestly, I thought I was going to make the team out of spring training in 2009. I was the last person sent down, and they told me that I had just got put on the roster, the 40-man roster, that offseason before in the Dominican. They called me and told me that I had got put on. So that was kind of a big deal at that point. You know, so I was already on the roster, but I had 3 options left, and they decided to keep David DeLucci, who at the time was on a guaranteed contract. He had signed a 2-year deal the year prior, so he was on the last year of his deal. And they felt like his veteran presence was going to be a little bit more beneficial at that point in time. So, you know, me being young and dumb, I didn't know any better. I was like, oh my God, I almost made the team, you know, like, holy cow, I'm so close. So I go off of hitting like 7,000 in spring training with a few home runs to going 0 for 34, my first 34 at bats in AAA, thinking like, I'm going to get released. Like, that's the highs and lows of baseball that it can do to you. And just mentally, it just destroys you. But I kind of picked it back up, and my wife had come out to visit me in Columbus, Ohio, and I had to take her to the airport that day. So this was May 30th. It was my brother's birthday, which is why I'll never forget it. But I take her to the airport, drop her off. She has to fly back home to go back to school because she was still in school. No, she was working at the time. She was working. So I forget what year it is sometimes. It's like 2072, isn't it? It feels like it after quarantine. But I go to the field right before the game. I'm catching that night. I'm in the bullpen warming up our pitcher. our other catcher, who's also on the 40-man roster, who is one of my best friends. We were roommates from the first year of pro ball all the way up to the big leagues, essentially. He comes running down to the bullpen, and he goes, hey, Torey Lovello, who's now the manager of the Diamondbacks, was my AAA manager at the time. He goes, Torey needs to see you. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, oh, did I just like get traded or something? Like, what the heck just happened? So I go running in there, and Torey meets me like in the tunnel between the clubhouse and the dugout in Columbus. And he goes, hey, he literally like is like grabbing me like this. He goes, I think you're getting called up. I don't know. Don't effing move. And I'm like standing there like, what the frick just happened, you know? And he like runs out, is on the phone, comes back. He's like, here's the deal. We don't know yet. You may be getting called up for Grady Sizemore. He just like tweaked his hamstring or something. You have all your stuff here. They're in Cleveland. You may have to go. Sit tight. Don't get hurt. Okay. So everybody kind of sees this happening in the dugout. Well, our other catcher, who was my best friend, Wyatt, kind of got a little upset, I think, because it wasn't him. He thought he was going up, you know, he thought I was going up to be a catcher. Well, I was like a super utility player at first. So they were looking for a little more versatility than they were just a third catcher on the team at the time. And he gets upset. He ends up getting kicked out of the game in the second inning. And I had to go in and catch the rest of the game. And Torey literally tells me, like, screaming at me, if you effing get hurt, I'm going to effing kill you. So, like, I'm like, you know, what the hell am I supposed to do after that? So
I'm shitting my pants.
Yeah. I was scared to death. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, please don't get hit with a foul ball, you know, like catching balls.
Did you block anything?
You know, doing that kind of stuff. I ended up hitting a home run that game. I made it through. I didn't find out till about 3 hours after the game. They just decided to make the move. So I drove to Cleveland at 1:30 in the morning. And my wife had literally just gotten off the airplane, and I called her and said, Kelly, like, I just got called up. It's like, first time. She never left the airport. She got her bag out of the terminal and went and bought another ticket back to Cleveland and came out and saw my debut, which happened to be in Minnesota.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, it was in Minnesota.
Beautiful
That's cool.
Metrodome.
You know what? That was one thing that I always thought was really cool, because Minnesota, from before I played there, always had a kind of a special place in my heart, because I made my major league debut there. You know, I got my first hit there, all that good stuff. And then it was cool that I ended my career there. It actually worked out. It kind of was like full circle, you know. It was right. It seemed like it was kind of supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
What, I don't know, this might be a strange question, but like, what was your reaction to like the Metrodome? Because that place was a dump.
You know what though? It wasn't to me. Like, I'd never seen anything like it. It was like the
That's
coolest
true.
thing ever. You know, I'm in the big leagues. I could care. It
That's
could have
true.
been some rookie ball place. If you'd have told me it was the big leagues, I would have thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, that's very
But it
true.
sucks. It kind of sucks. I mean, it's great that we have Target Field now, but, you know, it kind of sucks that they tore it down, because I see pictures, you know, especially now that we just moved. You know, we were going through boxes of stuff, and there's all these pictures from my debut my wife took. My best friend ended up flying out, too, with my wife. And, you know, those were the only two people there. My parents couldn't make it. So my best friend and my wife were there, and they're taking thousands of pictures. And my first game, I hit a home run as my first ever hit. And, you know, just all of the crazy stuff that happened, like seeing all those pictures, that, you know, you're like, dang, man, I'm so old that place isn't even here anymore. Like, you know, you don't think about yourself that old when you're playing with kids that are 21. You're like, dude, the place I made my debut in is not even friggin' here anymore. So screw you.
And we gotta get your take on a certain happening.
Okay.
So
let's
let's
a couple of certain happenings.
Yeah. First one, let's turn the Wayback Machine to 2015. It's a day in October.
Yeah.
Yep.
ALDS
A day in October. You're at the Rogers Center in beautiful Toronto, Canada, and a certain Jose Bautista comes up in the bottom of the seventh, and just take us through what he was like.
I mean, first of all, just to start with a series, like that whole season, it was unbelievable. I didn't I didn't make the team out of spring training that year. I did the year before. I got sent down in 15, and I was Yu Darvish's personal catcher. Well, he got hurt, so they sent me down and kept another kid by the name of Carlos Corporon. Well, he ended up not playing very good, and he got hurt, so I got called up right around the trade deadline in 15 when we were 14 and a half games behind the Houston Astros at the trade deadline. So that's July 31st. We ended up trading for Cole Hamels. We traded for Jake Diekman, Sam Dyson. And the next thing you know, we get all those guys in there. I end up becoming Cole's personal catcher. And we come back from 14 and a half games back, and we won the division on the last day of the season. And, obviously it was something nobody ever expected, especially from like media and everything like that. It's coming off the year we had in 14, we were terrible. We were supposed to be really good, but we had a ton of injuries. Prince Fielder was hurt. Adrian Beltre was hurt. Those are all excuses, but we were supposed to be really good and we sucked. So, the next year, the fact that we ended up kind of overcoming that was a really big stepping stone for a lot of those guys. And, we ended up playing the Toronto Blue Jays in the first round of the playoffs, who have like basically murderers row. They've got Edwin Encarnacion, Josh Donaldson. They've got douchebag Batista. They got
they had Tulowitzki.
They had Tulo. Yes. They got Justin Smoke. Like there's some guys on that team that can absolutely swing. Kendrys Morales was there. There was a lot of guys that were really, really good. It comes up. We win the first 2 games of the series in Toronto. Where I caught the second game. Cole threw tremendous, did a great job. Oh, Jace, can you help? Sorry, Jojo, my daughter's hungry. You want to say hi?
No worries.
Want to say hi? Come here. Can you say hi to everybody? Can you say hi?
Hi.
Say hi.
Hi.
I'm just hungry.
That's all
You're
right.
hungry?
He's hungry.
That's wholesome content for the
This is
podcast.
the wholesome part of it.
You're what?
Protein.
Okay, let's tell Jace. Can you go tell Jace to get you a snack, please? Okay, thank you. Sorry, we can.
We needed the no. We need the
wholesome
wholesome family content.
That's my life right there.
You're a family man now. We love to
I
see
am,
it.
yeah, that is for sure. So we end up winning the first 2 games. We go back home on an extremely high note, right? Thinking we're going to end this thing in 3. David Price pitches, shoves it up our rear ends. Then we face Marco Estrada, who shoves it up our rear ends. We end up having to go back to Toronto for Game 5. Cole's pitching. We had a tremendous game. Everything was in our setup for us. You know what I mean? Our bullpen was good, which our bullpen there was a major strength. We had a nasty pen. And, we have our horse on the mound who's on full rest. We felt really good about it. We're facing Marcus Stroman, who threw really well. Cole threw really well. It ends up becoming 7th inning. It's the famous, Russell Martin throws the ball off Chu's bat with Ruben Odor at third base. And, the ball goes haywire. And, yeah, we're snack time. So I apologize, guys.
Oh, don't
No
worry about
worries.
it.
So we end up going ahead 3-2 in the 7th inning. And, there was a huge deal. Nobody knew if that was illegal. Well, that had actually happened to me in 2007. I had a left-handed batter at the plate with a right-handed pitcher. And he check swings with a right-handed slider at his back foot. And, he check swings. And the umpire said, yes, he did. And he comes back with the bat like this. What? Right when I'm releasing the ball, and it hits the ball right off the tips of my fingers, and it goes out of the stadium over the net. And there was a runner at second base, and the runner scored. It's a 2-base error. Not an error, but it's a 2 – or I think it is actually. It's a 2-base error. So I'm screaming at our manager, that's legal, that's legal. And he's like, oh, no, it is. He's ready to choke me, because that was a heated moment, Game 5. The winner goes to the ALCS, big moment in the game. So we end up going up 3-2. We're cruising. Cole is cruising. Come out for the bottom of the 7th inning. We have a 3-pitch ground ball that should have been an out. Elvis Andrus, it takes a weird hop on him, and we make an error. All right, no big deal. Runner at first. With a lefty, Ryan Goins comes up. He hits a 1-hopper right to Mitch Moreland. Moreland grabs it, like fumbles it 17 times. Alligator arms it to Elvis at second base, drops it. Like it was it was 2 errors and 2 pitches, and we've got runners at first and second. They try to bunt, we get an out. The next pitch, they try to bunt again. Adrian Beltre comes in, throws it right to Elvis Andrus at second base. We have a double play, like perfect, and it just hits his glove and drops out. Like, this dude is the most sure-handed guy you've ever seen in your life, and like to have those things happen right there. Jojo, stop, please. Jeez, she's like kicking the table. Joelle, please. Hey, Jace, can I get a little help? So 3 errors, tie game. Bautista comes up with runners at first and third, I think. We have Sam Dyson in, who's had like a .1 ERA. It was disgusting. He'd only given up like 4 fly balls the whole year. And we try to go, knowing Jose's spot is in, Sam's has the ability to throw sinkers like down and away to guys, which is why he's so good. Or was so good. I know you may not think highly of him at this moment just based off what happened, but I can attest the guy is a stud, and he would never have done anything to like purposely hurt anybody. But that's a side note. So he ends up leaking the ball like right middle in, right into his nitro zone, and he hits the ball, and it hasn't landed yet. And I was in shock. I really was. I watched the videos because somebody texts it to me at least once a week. It's like, oh, look at this guy, So, yeah, I get to see it a lot and relive it a lot. But it's funny because I blacked out. I remember it, but I remember telling him, or in my mind telling me to be like, he's standing there, you know what I mean? And then he throws the bat at our dugout. And in my mind, I'm like, I need to punch him in the face. Like, I need to do something, tell him to run or something. But I was just so numb. I could not believe what had just transpired and how that went about. And yeah, the rest is history. So now I'm on the wrong side of a few of those, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely lost games in heartbreaking ways, but never in ALDS Game 5.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I mean, It was over from there. We had no chance.
Well, Odor finished what you were wishing the next year.
He did. That was so awesome. I wish I was there for that. I got traded about a month before that to the Indians in 16. And I remember we had the day off in Cleveland that day, and my third base coach in Cleveland called me and was like, "Did you see what happened?" And I said, no. I was actually down at our place we were renting, had a little basement, and I was playing wiffle ball downstairs with my oldest son. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Turn the TV on now." So we go and we turn on MLB Network, and like the first thing you see is Odor smoking, and I'm like, yes! Like, it was so awesome. I mean,
it was a nice punch.
Was building up like so bad. He's a legend because of it. Good for him.
Yeah, and they had some history too.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear Odor being like, "I'm gonna kill this guy, I swear to God"?
Yeah. I mean, it was spring training. It was talked about a few times in spring training because obviously the media had brought it up. Coming back, we had Darvish coming back that year. The Blue Jays were still really good. We were really good. It's kind of one of those things that it was bound to happen. We were going to play each other at some point that year. And, the media brings it up, the narrative, like what's going to happen? Are you guys going to get retaliation? So then Banny, our manager, Jeff Bannister, brings it up, like, we're not going to do anything to this guy until the last game, which I kind of thought was chicken shit a little bit. But, if you're going to do it, do it. I don't believe in like doing it and then waiting so like they can't retaliate kind of thing. But I don't think Odor had that in his mind, and he just, the first time they played, it was game on, and then, the rest is kind of history on that. But I'll tell you what, that is one dude I would not mess with. There are very few dudes that I wouldn't, if the opportunity presented itself that I had to fight, he's one of those guys that, I mean, he's a ball of muscle. He's super quick twitch and, strong as an ox. Like, he's one of those guys that you're like, God, dude, you can take this guy, but then you see something out of him and you're like, oh, okay, hold on a second. And that was enough for me to be like, yeah, I'm good on that.
So what I'm hearing is you would bet on him in the ring.
I would 100% bet on him. If those two got to go one-on-one in the ring, I'm telling you right now, Bautista can say anything he wants. He would have zero chance.
All right.
Odor's like a
We're
honey
gonna have to set this up. Have to set up a
We'll
fight.
get the money
Yeah,
line
right.
going.
Yeah, exactly. And to transition into a guy that you maybe almost fought. Another instance was you and Butler.
Billy Butler.
And yeah, you and Billy Butler.
You knew where this was going.
Oh, I knew
Yeah.
exactly where. As soon as you said we were gonna bring it back, I'm like, oh, all right.
But I mean, at least in my opinion, well, I'll let you talk about it, but I mean, this is a little different in my opinion than the Bautista one, but like,
Yeah, considerably different, I think.
yeah, what take us through what happened there.
So one of my best friends in the minor leagues is Josh Tomlin. We were drafted a year apart from each other, but we played almost at every single level with each other. I caught his major league debut against the Yankees, which he shoved. He was kind of one of those guys who was an underdog. He, short in stature, just never didn't throw 95. It's kind of one of those, like, they want to write him off, but he just continues to just put up incredible numbers. So he kind of forced his way into the picture. So, I mean, he was a grinder. He always had my respect from that regard because he had nothing handed to him and he earned everything that he got. And, we're on the mound. He's on the mound pitching. He's throwing a great game. We started off the inning with strike one right down the middle. Butler's, very patient. He's very passive. He'll give you strike one. So we take advantage of it. He throws it right down the middle. Then we go cutter front door, like off of him. I knew he was going to take it, and it kind of like buckled him a little bit. And perfect pitch, like it was a pitcher's pitch, but I do think it was a strike. Umpire calls strike. He kind of starts mouthing off to the umpire. And I start laughing out loud, like literally laughing out loud. Not to be mean or anything. I just kind of was like, all right, bro, like shut up and get in the box. Like, let's go. So next pitch, we throw a ball up. Then I got him. I'm like, we've got him set up for a cutter down and away. He's either going to wave at it or he's just going to take it and walk back to the dugout. Well, he takes it. And I mean, it was a ball, and I admitted it after, but I mean, it was one of those ones where it's like this close, and he could have gone either way with it. It was a 50-50 pitch. And all I did was I caught it and tripped. Gibson, the home plate umpire, goes, ball. And I just go, like that. And I throw the ball back to the pitcher. And he starts looking, he stops like this. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, what, dude? Like, what? He's like, you can't have both of them. Neither of them are strikes. And then the umpire goes, actually, one of them was because I called it. And then he goes, well, if he wasn't sucking your, he wouldn't have got any of them strikes. And I was like, what did you say? Like, I snapped. And, it pissed me off. And, so I'm like, what, Jax? Go get a snack, dude. These guys are unbelievable with the snacks. Yeah, it really upset me. I don't know why. It probably shouldn't have. I probably should have just laughed at him, but it pissed me off a little bit, and I got in his face. And the umpire, as soon as he does, he gets right in between us. He's like, you don't want to do this. He's like, you don't want to get suspended. He's like, I like you too much. You can't get suspended. Then I can't have you anymore and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, get the heck out of my way. I'm going to kill this guy right now. So I calmed down. I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, just let's finish this off. We ended up going 3-2 on him, a couple of close pitches, throw a cutter. He hangs it. He hits a home run and turns around and just screams in my face and then throws the bat. And call it flashbacks, like whatever you want. I had PTSD. I don't know. I basically said some not so choice words to him, and he starts like running down the line, and I start running after him. And it clicked in my head that I was like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do. I saw Brian McCann one time. Carlos Gomez hit a home run, and Brian McCann stood on home plate so he could not get there. Well, I start running down the line, and that, for whatever reason, pops in my head, and I was like, that's what I'm doing. So I make a beeline back to the plate, and Tripp saw it, and he knew exactly what I was trying to do for some reason. And he just grabs me, like bear hugs me, and like starts yanking me out of there. And I was like, let me go. I'm going to kill this freaking guy. Like, I was ready to get suspended. Like, all I could think about was like, my wife's going to kill me because all my son's going to see his dad try to fight on TV right now. And she's always warned me out about, you need to be the bigger man and all this stuff. And I get it, but I don't know. It's just sometimes when you get, you're competing on the field, it's competitive, and then somebody goes a low blow, like you're like, dude, I'll show you low blow, dude. I know I'm faster than you, so.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, from some bad memories to hopefully at least a good memory, that same year you guys made it to the World Series. And obviously it didn't go the way you wanted it to. I mean, you drew a Game 7, and
Right.
we talk about it a lot. That's one of the Game 7s we remember just because of how back and forth it
I remember it
was.
too.
So take us through that. I mean, that was your first World Series.
It was, yeah. It was my first one, my only one, really. Hopefully hopefully I'll have a chance to do something like that again. But, what a whirlwind. I remember we played, we had to win the last day of the season in Kansas City. We had to win and Boston had to lose for us to be the 2 seed and them to be the 3 seed. Otherwise, it was vice versa. And it was the difference between we start out at home or we go to Boston. We already knew we were playing Boston at that point in time. So we end up winning. They end up blowing it. Toronto came back late in the game on them and, ended up beating Boston in Boston the last day of the season. So we're going crazy because we're the 2 seed. We had such a young team. A lot of those guys, they had a little bit of a taste of it in 2014 when they were the wild card team, the number 1 wild card team. And, they had a really, really good run in September. Well, a lot of those guys were still there for that group. We were there in 16, for that next run. But there was a really big, mental barrier for a lot of those guys to get over. And thankfully, they had, we had Mike Napoli and myself, which I'd been to the playoffs the last 4 straight years. Nap had, won 7 World Series and had a horseshoe in his rear end because he's the luckiest dude ever. And the greatest, best teammate, not named Joe Mauer ever. So, we had a lot of we were trying to get everybody going. We're the 2 seed, they got to come see us. That's so awesome. We knew our pitching staff was nasty. Our bullpen was nasty. Our front office in Cleveland, incredible, incredible people. And now your guys' leader, Derek Falvey, was our assistant GM and was one of the ones that drafted me. So he knows, there was a really good group of guys there. And they saw the talent that we had on the team, and they went all in. We got Andrew Miller. We even acquired Jonathan LaCroix at the time until he banged the trade like an idiot. But things really haven't gone well for him since then, unfortunately. They saw the opportunity we had. We went all in. We believed. As soon as we got Andrew Miller, we didn't want Chapman. That was the funny thing. We wanted Andrew Miller because we knew he's more of a weapon in our thought. You know what I mean? We already had a closer. Now we could kind of deploy this dude against lefties because we had a lot of lefties in our division even. And then you go face the Blue Jays, who have some good right-handed hitters, but they also had some good left-handed hitters. The Boston Red Sox have Big Papi, who you can never count out. All the teams in our league have some pretty powerful left-handed hitters. So getting Andrew Miller, it was a huge boon for us in the clubhouse, and we kind of took advantage of that and rode that high. We ended up playing Boston. Excuse me. Talk too much. Sorry.
No worries, man.
Water. We end up playing Boston, and we're all standing around the batting cage. They're taking batting practice, and we're stretching there. And all those guys come up to us and be like, hey, man, you guys had a great season, man. Good luck in the off season. They were going to just come in and walk all over us. And seriously, we had a little team meeting that was F these dudes. If they think they're going to come in our place and just, we're going to roll over for them, come on, man. Napoli was very instrumental in that. And he's like, dude, screw these guys. They don't know what's about to hit them. We're about to punch them in the mouth. And we go out and we win game 1. And the way Tito managed the game was awesome. Did a great job, using our bullpen to our fullest advantage and just kind of shutting the door on them. And they had no chance. We swept them in 3 games. Then we go on and play the Toronto Blue Jays, which we knew was going to be a tough time just based on their lineup. A lot of that was the same as the year prior, so I was very familiar with that. But we go out there. Trevor Bauer is supposed to start game 2 for us. He cuts his finger half off on his drone and, ends up throwing we win game 1, actually. We won game 1 and 2 in Cleveland. And then we go to Toronto. That's when Bauer pitches. They had to move him back to try to give him, a day or 2 extra to somewhat heal up, with all the rubber cement they put in there and whatnot that try to stop the bleeding essentially. He doesn't make it out of the first inning because there's just blood flying everywhere. And we essentially had a bullpen game. And the fact that our bullpen went in and threw 8 shutout innings was unbelievable against that offense in the ALCS. We take a 3-0 lead. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat now. We end up losing game 4. I think we were all right, and then we ended up losing it like in the middle part of the innings. And we were kind of gassed anyway. We go out and we start a rookie who had one start in the big leagues, game 5, and Jose Bautista made a very poor decision by going public and saying that this rookie's going to be shaking in his boots. So he goes out and proceeds to shove for 5.5 innings, gives up 2 hits, no runs. We destroy them, and we're going to the World Series. Like, it was so surreal. None of us ever really imagined it. I think to that extent, you always wanted to do it, but the fact that it was really happening, we partied like no tomorrow. We sent a bunch of pictures like on True Media, on social media, of like pictures of like champagne bottles and guys as cowboy boots. Like, here you go, Jose, like, thanks for making him shake in his boots. Like, just fun stuff like that. And I think the World Series, was one of the more memorable ones. Obviously last year's was incredible too. They're all really good, but I think having it come down to game 7 like that and having the 3-1 lead and, not really finishing the job we should have done in Chicago, coming back home, getting down really early, and then having Rajai Davis hit that home run was – you talk about blackout. I don't remember any of it. I remember – I can see it on TV, and I seriously try to remember it, and I'm like, I don't remember that at all. I don't remember it. The only thing I remember is everybody just started going crazy in the dugout. Like, that was like 10 minutes after the home run was hit. Like, I'm watching on TV back, and we're all celebrating at home plate. Like, you just hit a walk-off home run. Like, it was the most unbelievable thing. And this comes from, against Aroldis Chapman, who throws 100+ miles an hour. Rajai Davis has the worst batting average against of premium velo, which is 95 miles an hour and up, of anybody in the big leagues. Like, it just was one of those, like, that God had his hand in that moment to make that a special moment, and then just take it right from him right after that, an inning or 2 later. But had we not had a rain delay, I will go to my grave saying we win the World Series. But the rain delay kind of gave those guys a chance. Jay Hay had his infamous speech in the weight room of the visiting clubhouse, and kind of, you kind of equate it to like a boxing match, right? Where you're punching a guy and he's like kind of stumbling backwards, and then all of a sudden the bell rings. It gives him a chance to like, whoa, kind of catch his breath. We kind of equate that to the same thing, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember that day because I was watching it on TV, and my dad was actually in Cleveland for a business trip. And he was watching it in his hotel, and he's a little bit in front of us, like me and my brother watching it. And I just hear him on the other end of the phone. He's like, oh, boy, this just got interesting. And we're sitting there like, it's Rajai Davis at the plate. How can this – oh, my God. Like, as soon as he hit it, we're like, that's gone. It
was unbelievable.
Well –
what incredible moment. You've never felt more like a little kid in your entire life. Like, that's the cool thing about – I think, sports in general is grown men. I was 34 at the time, I think, or 33. I felt like a 6-year-old playing Little League then. It was just that cool of an experience.
That's
Awesome.
unreal.
That's
man.
awesome.
And obviously the next year, some of the best parts of your career in Minnesota.
Honestly, it was, that is 1A and 1B were 16 and 17 in regards to favorite years of my career. With like not even a question. Our 17 Twins team was arguably my most favorite team to play on because, I think they projected us in spring training that year to win like 58 games. And we were joking, like we shouldn't even have left Florida. Like at that point, like what's the point, right? You might as well play and go to Rochester and play. And the fact that we were able to kind of gel and, the core group of guys that we had, transforming the thought process that was there, because the year prior in 16, the Twins lost 103 games, and going from losing 103 we were the first team in Major League history to lose 100 games a year before and go to the playoffs the next year. And I think that is, our game's been played for 120 something years, 130 years. And to have us be the only group of guys that have ever done that, I've never been more proud of a city, of a team. Just, it was so cool to be a part of that and to kind of be one of the leaders and getting guys and changing that losing mentality, so to speak, because, you could see it. I mean, we had plenty of ups and downs that year for sure, but, we never it was more of like this, it wasn't like this, where you maybe not like going up, but you're going up like this, but then you're going straight down. It's like the stock market right now, not going the way we need it to go. But what an incredible group of guys, and just really, really cool experience. And I really wish we could have beat New York, because we definitely could have. I think there's some, you guys know full well, there's some other demons that need to be exercised in regards to New York and Minnesota playoff baseball. But, I think things are definitely looking up for that organization. I miss it thoroughly. So.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to point out is like you got to, play with the whole core team that is here right now, that the whole team is built on. Like you played with like Polanco, Sano, Eddie, Buxton, Kepler, Barrios, and they're all really young at that point. And what was it like playing with them?
Yeah, just you could obviously see the talent. The talent is undeniable. We've got pitching arms, Taylor Rogers, Barrios. They've made some really good signs too. I think that they're going to really like Rich Hill. You guys is one of my favorite human beings on planet Earth. You are going to love when this guy pitches for you guys. He is like the most old school, but he's like 72 and he throws fastballs and like hammer curveballs. And you guys are going to love him to death, by the way.
Awesome.
But that's the talent, the core of talent, that those kids, they'd all kind of basically just gotten there. Eddie had gotten there, I think, the year before, maybe 2 years before that. Polanco, the same thing. Kep the year before. Buck the year before. Barrios was the year before. They just hadn't had enough time yet, essentially, to not figure it out, but kind of figure it out, like in regards to figuring out in regards to like, hey, I can play at this level. I need to learn how to like control myself, calm my breathing down, just, focus on a pitch to pitch thing and not let the lows get too low and the highs get too high. And I think, Eddie's taken a step that, I think a lot of people saw, but you look at Eddie's swing and you're like, what is this kid swinging at? And then he'll swing at it and miss it by this much, and then the next pitch he'll throw it there again, and he hits it 700 feet. And you're like, what?
Yeah, I've seen him tomahawk some pitches that you're just he had no business.
Yeah,
like if you look, I was watching the other day, his first pitch he got and he hit for a home run, and that was like pretty high too.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is going on here?
But just having those guys have a little more seasoning, a little more experience under their belt, and just establishing themselves. That's a big part of it. And those guys have started to do that. Now they've created that core that is really young. They're studs. They're all under contract. Like there is some things to be really excited about there. And not only that, your coaching staff is incredible. Rocco is one of the best human beings on planet Earth. He's ridiculously smart. He's really good looking because he looks like me. He's been a player. He's been in the front office. Like he does a really good job of communicating, like understanding the differences between the coaching staff and the front office and the players, like molding that all together. What do you got? Oh, you got some water. Good job, sis. It's about her fifth thing of water. She's probably going to have to go to the bathroom here pretty soon. Can you try to go potty? Okay. All right. But yeah, that core guys of group, they're just doing a really good job of kind of supplementing around that and adding pieces where they can. You get Nelly Cruz. They made a couple of really shrewd signings that they didn't get a lot of credit for. But, Scope last year, Donaldson Scope was a big one. CJ Cron was a big one. They weren't the Bomba squad for a reason. Like these guys swing the bat. And, now they're adding that little bit of pitching to go along with it. And I think, to me, they're the team to beat, arguably in, the American League. I think they can easily compete with the Yankees and the Astros. They just kind of need to get that monkey off their shoulder, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have kind of a reminder of that 2017 team. I don't know if you could see it. It's kind of blurry, but I have your hat.
Oh, that's mine.
2017 postseason, the game at New York that I bought online because that was the most fun team to watch in person. Yeah. Like, we talked about this, like, what's your favorite team to watch for the Twins? I said 2017 because everyone counted us out and we made the playoffs. That's awesome.
It was really cool. And I remember celebrating in Cleveland, which was kind of sweet in its own right. Knowing that what we did there last year, like, oh, they just won the World Series in this clubhouse, so why don't we celebrate here too? Maybe that's good luck. But we partied like in that clubhouse until 4 or 5 in the morning. I mean, it was one of the best ones I've ever seen. Just for that reason, I think everybody, a lot of those kids had never done it before. So watching Natalie and me do it, they were like, oh, this is great, And honestly, I thought it was really sweet, like seeing Joe get a chance to do it, because he said something in an interview when I was standing right there. And, he said that you just never know when you're ever going to have a chance to taste champagne again, and early in his career, he tasted champagne a ton. And, there was a good window there where he didn't. And the fact that, he got to do it one last time there, I thought was really, really cool. And just knowing Joe and knowing, obviously what he means to Minnesota and, Twin Cities in general and the Twins organization, really cool kind of, unfortunately, it ended up being his send-off in regards to the playoffs. But hopefully that one was a memorable one for him for sure. Hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Joe, you've been talking of that he's like your best teammate. Tell us a little bit about working with him. And I mean, obviously you got to retire right alongside him, right behind the plate. Yeah.
Nobody cared about me, but that's fine.
I was there. You saw me. I was there too. I gave you the big thank you. Like, I was there. I was sad to see you go.
That too. Obviously we talk about how good of a baseball player he is, because he is the best catcher of my era, bar none. I had a chance to play against him, play with him when he was behind the plate. One thing he doesn't get a lot of credit for is his defensive ability at first base. He should have been a Gold Glove first baseman, like, bar none. Nothing against Hosmer or any of those other guys. They're really, really good over there too. But, I mean, I got to see it day in and day out. And what that guy did, 300, he didn't hit for power, which Hosmer hit for a few more homers, which is the Gold Glove should be a defensive award, not necessarily an offensive award. But not that Haas was not deserving. I do not mean that by any means. But, just having a chance to see what type of human being this guy is a grade A, just class of all class, is literally the same person no matter what. And, he would always say hi to you as the opposing catcher would come up and be like, hey, take it easy on us today. Kind of his funny little saying. I remember playing against him. He got out and I heard him drop an F-bomb. And I was like, oh my God, Joe Mauer. What do you do? You don't do that. But
Joe Mauer
he's
swears.
So competitive, but he's so composed and reserved. And, he saved it for the right moment. It wasn't just like he gets out like some guys do. And then it's break stuff. Hey, look at me. I'm really mad right now. Just the class of all class. I cannot stress that enough. What a solid teammate and human being. And then, it turns out he was pretty good at baseball too.
Did you ever work with him, do any catching drills? Because obviously at that time he was playing first. But did you ever pick up anything from him?
You know what? We would talk a little bit about certain pitchers and how, Perk was still there at the end. That was the end of Glenn Perkins' run as well. But he had a ton of experience in catching Perk and just trying to get his mentality, and just hearing those two talk would be kind of funny too, because they would go back to 2004 and he could remember every single pitch that they threw in a certain spot. That just shows you his intelligence level, the fact that he could remember that, and I know I can do a lot of that too, but they were both bantering back and forth with each other. Like, it was incredible. But, you know, a lot of times we would talk about setups, and we would talk a lot about umpires and you know, getting comfortable with guys. And he'd be like, hey, how's this guy doing back there? Like, it looks like he's struggling a little bit. Like, I used to say this to him, you know, why don't you try that? Perfect. Like, all right, I'm up for anything, you know. But he was always willing to help and always willing to you know, if you needed anything, you could ask Joe, and it'd be there like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And
And we're back.
you know, yeah, Joe's a big clubhouse guy, but another clubhouse occurrence are pranks. Do you have any awesome prank stories? Maybe one that
Some
you pulled,
shenanigans.
maybe one that was pulled on you, or
Yeah,
you watched being
we
pulled?
actually in 2017, Eduardo Escobar, who is also one of my favorite human beings on planet Earth.
That's Pete's guy. He loves Esky.
Yeah, I mean, Esky is also just very genuine, humble human being. Like, awesome dude. Him and Robbie Grossman were getting into it, like joking around with each other, and Robbie took Caballo's pants. They were like $500 jeans that he bought, and he was like walking around, like, you know, strutting in them and stuff. Like, they were like skin tight. He took them and he freaking froze them in a block of ice during the game, and then put them on his chair in Detroit. It's just a huge block of ice with like half of his pants sticking out, and Esky lost it. Like, I'm gonna kill you. Like, you know, we were laughing like crazy. It was one of the funniest things to see his reaction. And then he realized, like, we were just joking about it, you know, and he wasn't like malicious. Like, cause I think at first he thought he was trying to be like, you know, I don't have a lot of money, but you took my $500 jeans and froze them solid with my belt in it, which was probably another $300. But, you know, we ended up getting him the same pair of jeans and a belt. So it wasn't, you know, it was just more fun. That's one of the ones that just comes to mind like right away. I know that we did tons of other stuff. Nothing's really like coming to me right now, because I'm sure I've done something stupid to somebody too.
That's awesome, though.
We used to like hang. Gibby and I would get into it a lot. Gibby was probably one of my closest friends on that team, from the pitching staff for sure. But I used to take all of his clothes out of his locker and hang them on one of those, like they're like basically like when somebody gets sent up or sent down, they have these big lockers that they roll around and excuse me, put all your stuff on. I would go take it and then hang it in the toilet stalls and like hang it all around for fun, and, you know, take his shoes and like, you know, cut his shoelaces, or, you know, just fun stuff, like nothing malicious, but obviously things that you can easily replace, and not like his game cleats or his game glove or something like that.
You're not like Ken Griffey bringing a cow in.
No, I just never really, I don't know. I didn't, you know, because now I got to deal with this thing. You know, I got Gibby, you know, you always give gifts to the clubhouse guys at the end of the year, you know, to kind of say thank you. And I bought them all Apple Watches, and there was this huge thing we had. It was all like set up to where Gibby thought he was going to buy them all watches. And, you know, Gibby and I were talking about it, but I had already bought them watches, and they were all wearing them, like doing this, you know, like, oh, really? You know, and Gibby didn't even realize. And he goes to give them, and they're like, oh, no, Jimmy already bought us watches. Like, we don't need these anymore. He lost it. Like, just, you know, fun things like that, you know, it may kind of sound dumb, but there's probably more to the story that I should have said, I guess, but the backstory.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, we love it. We love it.
Just overpaid babies. I was actually very underpaid, but that's all right.
Yeah. I hope you're doing fine now.
We're all right. Yeah. My wife, she's got a job. She does good. So I'm just a stay-at-home dad now.
That's awesome, though. And
Pete, go ahead.
Okay. It wouldn't be a Roofdeck podcast episode without some hot takes, Chris. At the end of every episode, we have one. So I guess we could start with you. Do you have like a baseball-related hot take for us?
Yeah, I mean, these guys got to figure it out at some point. Honestly, I was up to date until about a week ago, and things have been changing so much. You know, I know for like 100% certainty that they will play baseball this year. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen and I've heard and a couple of people that I've heard talk to, or like our group messages that we've talked to with the Dodgers, is I think everybody's trying to posture themselves possibly for the end of next year.
Yeah.
Knowing for the CBA's up at the end of next year, it has not gone well, and it has been kind of a point of contention a little bit between the owners and the players for the last 5 years. But I think, honestly, right now, you guys, the NBA's got it figured out, the NHL, football. Like, why do we got to be the only guys that are just, worrying about this right now? Like, let's worry about next year, and let's just do what America needs us to do, and that's freaking play baseball.
Exactly.
That's not really a hot take, so that was kind of brutal. But
that's as good as we wanted from you, man.
I love that. I guess I could go next. My hot take. Max Meyer will be a stud for the Marlins.
Oh, that's right. I just read that. I saw that last night.
He will. He's gonna do really well. University of Minnesota Golden Gopher, drafted 3rd overall by the Marlins. He's gonna do. My prediction. He's gonna do really well.
That's awesome.
He pitched really well for the Gophers, and I might have a bias, but at least in my opinion. College players always do better than high school ones. Not always, but I don't know. If I were a GM, I'd be going after college players. So Max Meyer, he's going to bring in a lot of money and a lot of wins. Yep.
I'll just go. I don't know if this is quite a hot take. It's more of a prediction, but I think Manfred's going to enforce a 50-game season. The Twins are going to go 35-15. And Nelson Cruz is going to lead the league with 23 home runs. He's going to tear it. He's going to tear it up.
23 on the dot.
Yep, 23.
I love that prediction. That is a hot take. Oh, I like that.
Oh, Chris, I have made some pretty hot takes on this one.
The San Diego Padres are going to the World Series this year.
That is my hot take, and it's nothing against you or your Dodgers. See, this is where I knew I'd talk about it because – I know Chris is on the Dodgers staff. But I have logic behind it. The last 2 National League teams to make it have had Brian Dozier on their roster, and Dozier made it to the Padres, so they have to go to the World Series. So but I don't know. I think my hot take is not as hot as. I'm expecting the Dodgers to lead the way for the National League, and it might be biased because Chris is here, but I think –
You know what, though? Here's my hot take. I got a new one for you guys. I think it's going to be somebody outlandish that makes the playoffs. I know they're talking about expanded playoffs, but here's the thing. If the season is 50 games, good teams – it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you don't have that long enough season to make it up. You know what I mean? To where in 2017 the Dodgers started off, or maybe it was 16 the Dodgers, or 18, I don't even remember. They were terrible. And if it would have been a 50-game season, they wouldn't even have made the playoffs. You know what I mean? And then they end up going to the World Series that year. So I think it could, it could be somebody like Baltimore who just,
they get hot.
They get hot early and it kind of carries them through, and it's something that nobody expected.
Exactly.
You heard it there, Baltimore.
Baltimore for playoffs. We love that.
Along with the Royals and the Mariners.
Detroit.
I mean, the Royals might get a better call because I think the Royals are a little better positioned than Baltimore right now. But
I would love for the Mariners to break their playoff drought this year.
That would be cool.
That's their best chance. 50, if it's only 50.
Yeah, you played in Seattle, Chris.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, last year the Nationals wouldn't have made it if it was 50.
You're right.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they were terrible to start the season.
Yeah.
Then
I think they were like
around.
12 or 15 games under 500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a World Series champs.
Well, it's sounding crazy over at the Gimenez house.
We're losing it now, so.
Yeah.
Well, perfect timing. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris. It means the world to us.
Yeah, this is a blast, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We might have to bring you back for hot takes. I mean, if Baltimore goes true, we might have to bring you back.
If Baltimore goes to the playoffs, then I'm in 100%. I should go to the casinos right now too.
Yep, exactly.
Go put money right now.
You're already in Nevada. It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, thanks so much, Chris. I mean,
Thank you guys.
I caught in high school, and I'm just like nerding out right now. You were my idol, my catching idol. It wasn't Joe Mauer, it was Chris Gimenez.
No, I know you're lying, but that's all right. I'll take it.
I mean, it's always great to talk to you, Chris. Like, it's last time I saw you was in Colorado last summer,
last year.
and it's always awesome to talk to you and pick your mind for some baseball knowledge.
I appreciate it. I got you guys all fooled because I really don't know as much as I say I do, I guess.
A lot more than us.
He winged his way through the MLB.
I did, yeah. For my stunning good looks and personality, that's how I got through.
Fake it till you make it, Chris.
That's exactly right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so
man.
much, Chris.
You bet, guys. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. See you, Chris.
See you guys.
See you, Chris.
See ya.